Hello, I'm Karen Blythe, Controller Consultant at Hain Solutions. In the previous demo video of Controller Web, I showed you how to complete a month-end submission and set the company status to ready. Although I touched on import functionality, I used import specifications that had already been created. In this video, I'm going to show you how you can create your own import specifications from scratch, including some new functionality that was released in version 11.1.1 in July 2025. I'm going to cover three different types of import: a standard single period import with conditional mapping, a multi-period import, and a journal import. So first, a single period import. From the first page in Controller Web, I'm going to select my period in actuality. In this case, I'm using 2507 actuals. I'll select my company, which is UK Holdco. Then from the Populate tab, I'll go to Import Data. Then I'll go to Import Settings and Specifications, and I want to create a new specification. Here I want to give it a name, which I'll call Actuals, and I'll give it a description, monthly Actuals import. Select my file type, which is XLSX, although I could also choose a CSV file here. The decimal separator and digit grouping characters are grayed out, as they are only relevant when importing CSV files. I can select a start and end row if I wish, and I can choose to skip zero amounts here, but I'll leave those options as they are on this import. The looping by period is something we'll come on to later when I create a multi-period import spec. I'll click on Create, and here you can see that it has created my import spec, but it is currently invalid as this is not yet complete. If I click into the import spec, we now get a page where I can define the source for each of the controller fields. If I just show you the file I'm importing, I have the period in actuality in column 1, the company in column 2, currency in column 3, the account in column 4, the counter company for intercompany balances in column 5, and finally the amount in column 6. So first of all, the account, which comes from column 4 of my file. There are some options for substring and concatenate if you need to divide or combine information in a source field. Next is the actuality, which I could also get from the file, or I could select Get from Context, which refers to the current period in actuality that I'm in, which is 2507 AC. For the amount, I'll choose a column from my file, which is column 6. And there are some options here for dividing and rounding if I need to. For the company, I'll get that from column 2 of my file. For the period, I'll get that from context, as I did for the actuality. If I have extended dimensions, I can activate them here by ticking the box, but I don't have any exact dimensions in this example. However, I do have counter company, which I'll get from column 5. And I don't need any of these. So now my fields are all defined, I just need to select a couple of options. Perform reconciliation means that Controller will reconcile the data that is imported, and if it doesn't balance, I can choose an account to post the difference to. I'm going to leave this though, as I know my file does balance. And clear data from selected forms allows me to overwrite any previously imported data for the same period, actuality, and company in case I need to upload more than once. So from here, I'll select my P&L and balance sheet forms, as it's just TB data that I'm importing. And here you can see the file settings that I've previously selected. If I now scroll all the way back up to the top and click Save, you'll see my import spec is now valid. For some fields, I may need to use a lookup table for example, to map an account in the local TB to a controller account. So I can go to Lookup Tables and click Create Lookup Table. I can give it a name, Accounts, and a description, Account Lookup. I'll select the controller object, which in this example is an account, but you can see I can also use lookup tables for companies and dimensions. Allowing duplicates would allow me to map a single source account to more than one controller account. So for example, a trial balance account and a statistical account if required. I don't need that on this import though. Conditional mapping allows me to map a source account to different controller accounts depending on the signage of the amount. I'm not going to select this just yet, but we will revisit this shortly. I'll now click Create. If I click in the lookup table, I can then add my lookup table data either manually, one row at a time, or I can import it from a file. I have my lookup table already created in Excel, so I can just upload this here. And now you can see that my lookup table is uploaded. Now I just need to go back into my import spec and amend the account field so that it uses the lookup table that I've just created. So now the import spec is ready to be used. I'll go back to the import data window and select my import file. Select the import spec that I've just created and click Next. Here I have one mapping error, which I know is my cash account. Now I could just add the mapping here and save it, but for my cash account, I want to apply some conditional mapping. So let's go to Import Settings and choose the lookup table. I now want to edit this lookup table so that it allows conditional mapping. And now I can add a row at the bottom for my cash account. Choose the condition. So if it's positive, I want to map it to a cash account. And the alternative account, if it's negative, I want to map to an overdraft account. And then click Save and Done. Now I'll go back to run my import again. This time you can see that I have no mapping or other errors. If I click Next, I then get a preview of my import, showing me the details of what I'm importing. And then finally, I can click on Import to import the file. I then get a message at the top to confirm the file has been imported. Now I can continue with the rest of the month-end submission by working through the tabs in the workflow as covered in the previous video. The next import I'm going to show you is a multi-period import using looping by period. This can be used to upload more than one period at a time, for example, for a budget or a forecast import. From the home screen, I'll select my budget period for 2501 and my company UK Holdco. From the Populate tab again, I'll go to Import Data, Import Settings, and Specifications. Create a new specification. We'll give it a name, budget, and a description. Budget import 12 months. I'll use an XLSX file, leave these options as they are, and this time I want to tick looping by period. Now I need to define my fields in the same way as I did for my monthly actuals import. Again, if I show you the file that I'm importing, it's based on the same file format I had before, except I don't have the period and actuality in the file this time, and I have my values for all 12 periods in column 6 onwards. At the top here is a message that the actuality and period, which you may remember I set as get from context in the actuals import, are now available at runtime, so I don't need to define them here. The account is from column 4 and uses the accounts lookup table. The amount field is now slightly different as I need to tell it the start and end column of my data. So my start column is 6 and my end column is 17. Note, if I tried entering an end column that was more than 12 from the start column, I would get an error, as I can only import 12 periods at a time, or 13 if you have 13 periods defined in the general configuration. Then the company is from column 2. I've got no extended dimensions. The counter company I need to activate and is from column 5. And again, I need to select which forms I want it to overwrite, which are my P&L and balance sheet. Then scroll back up to the top, click Save, and now you can see my import spec is valid. Click Done, and now I can import my file. So I'll select my file, select my import spec, and now you can see that we can choose the actuality and the start period. These are set to the actuality and period that we are in by default, but they can be changed here if required. Click Next. Here you'll see I have 12 mapping errors, but it's actually just one error repeated 12 times. If I correct that on one of these lines, and click Save, it now clears the error on all lines and I can continue with my import. If I click Next, I then get a preview of my import showing me the details of what I'm importing. And then finally, I can click on Import to import the file. I then get a message at the top to confirm the file has been imported. The status of this company has now changed to processing for period 1. And also if I go into period 12, you can see that is also now processing as it has loaded the data for 12 periods. And it's now ready for me to continue with the rest of the budget submission. The final type of import I'm going to show you is a journal import. From the home screen, I'll go back into my actuals for 2507, choose my company, UK Holdco, and this time I'll go to the Journals tab and Import Journals. Import Settings, Specifications, Create Specification. You'll see this works in exactly the same way as the data import. So I'll give my specification a name and a description. Here I can choose whether my journal import file has a debit credit layout, but in my example, I just have all the values in one column, and I need a start row of 5 to ignore my headers. Click Create. Again, if I just show you the file I'm importing, this time my file has header rows, which is why I chose to start the import at column 5. I have the period, actuality, company, journal type, journal number, account, amount, description. The record number is like a batch number that you can assign to your journals and needs to be unique for each journal in the file. So now I'll work through each of the fields, defining which column of the import file each item comes from. So my account is from column 6. I don't need a lookup table this time. Actuality I'll get from context. Amount is column 7. If I had ticked debit credit layout, then I'd have to define separate columns for the debit amount and the credit amount. Company is column 3. Period I'll get from context. I don't need extended dimensions or counter companies for this import, but I do need a journal description from column 8, a journal number, which I'll get from column 5. Note, if I don't include a journal number reference, then it will just allocate the next available journal number. And if I use a journal number that already exists, then that journal will be overwritten. I need a journal type, which is column 4, and a record number, which is column 9. And then I have the option to either reject unbalanced journals or select an account to post any differences to. I'll choose reject. Now I'll scroll back up to the top. Click Save. Now my import spec is valid, so I can click Done. Now I can select my journal file, select my import spec, click Next. I have no errors, so click Next again. I get a preview of my import showing me the details of what I'm importing. And then finally, I can click on Import to import the file. I then get a message at the top to confirm the file has been imported. So as you can see, creating your own import specs in Controller Web is very simple and designed for end users to be able to manage themselves. Until now, the import specs have only been able to handle straightforward single period imports, but with the new functionality added recently for conditional mapping and period looping, we are now starting to be able to handle more complex imports. After importing the data, we can then continue working through the rest of the submission as I covered in the previous video. That's all from me. Thank you for your time, and please reach out to us here at Hain if you have any questions.